My sister-in-law singled me out during Thanksgiving dinner and told her kids, "Study hard or you'll end up like your aunt." Have you ever been made to feel like your entire life was a warning sign for other people's kids? What if that casual insult came from family and sparked a fight that forced me to choose between my peace and my marriage? Because that's exactly what happened one ordinary Thanksgiving, and the fallout changed absolutely everything. It all started so innocently. I was just passing a bowl of mashed potatoes to my nephew. You know, the kind of mundane, everyday holiday moment. That's when I heard my sister-in-law, Gretchen, practically whisper my name. She was leaning in close to her two kids, gesturing subtly in my direction, completely oblivious that I was practically at her elbow. She had no idea I could hear every single word. She told her daughter and son to pay attention in school, to work hard. And why? Because if they didn't, she said, they'd end up like Aunt Wendy. Like me. Her 12-year-old daughter, innocent as can be, asked, "What's wrong with Aunt Wendy?" And Gretchen, still completely unaware of my presence, went for the kill. She said I worked a dead-end job, lived in a tiny apartment, didn't have a husband or kids back then, and that my life was basically a warning about what happened when you didn't try hard enough. My face. Oh, my face just burned. I was still holding that heavy bowl of mashed potatoes, feeling the heat creep up my neck, certain everyone could see the flush. My brother-in-law, Gretchen's husband, was sitting right there. He didn't say a single word. Not one. My husband, bless his heart, was in the kitchen, helping his mom with the turkey. He missed the whole horrifying thing. I put the bowl down. "Excuse me," I choked out, needing to escape. I practically ran to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, trying to calm the rage and humiliation bubbling inside me. Because here's the thing. I'm a librarian, a public librarian. I have a master's degree in library science, for crying out loud. My tiny apartment. I chose it because I loved the neighborhood and didn't need more space. And not being married in my 20s? That was a choice too, to focus on my career, which led me to meet my amazing husband only 3 years ago. None of those things were failures. None of them made me a cautionary tale for children. It was absolutely infuriating. I went back to the table, finished dinner. I didn't say a word. Why? Because I refused to ruin a holiday my mother-in-law had spent 2 days cooking for. But for the rest of the night, I watched Gretchen. And suddenly, I started seeing things I'd somehow missed before. The little smile she'd give when she looked at my clothes, like she was silently judging them. The way she'd ask about my little job, putting all the emphasis on little. The casual mention that her kids went to private school, followed by, "Have you ever thought about having children, Wendy? Or is it too late for you now?" I was 34. It wasn't too late for anything. On the drive home, I poured my heart out to my husband. And he just sighed. "That's just how Gretchen is," he said. "You shouldn't take it personally." Not take it personally? How was I supposed to take someone using me as an example of failure to scare her own children into studying? I asked him. He tried to brush it off. She probably didn't mean it that way. But I wasn't having it. She absolutely meant it that way. I heard her say exactly those words. He went quiet then. Promised he'd talk to his brother about it. He never did. Over the next few months, it became a pattern. A cruel, soul-crushing pattern. At Christmas, she'd ask, in front of everyone, "Still working at that little library, Winnie? Or have you found something better yet?" At my nephew's birthday party, I overheard her telling another mom that I was the cautionary tale she used to motivate her kids. She said it like I wasn't standing 3 feet away. And at Easter, it was, "Aunt Wendy probably wishes she'd made different choices in life. It's not too late for you, darling, to avoid her mistakes." Every single time, my husband would tell me I was being too sensitive, that she didn't mean any harm. And every single time, I'd swallow my anger, let it burn a hole inside me, just to keep the peace, to avoid causing problems in his family. Then came Mother's Day. My mother-in-law hosted a beautiful brunch. The whole family was there. Gretchen arrived, and for the first hour it was all about her. The vacation home she and my brother-in-law were buying. Her kids at the top of their classes. Her big promotion to vice president at her marketing firm. And then, of course, she turned to me. That same little smile. "So, Wendy," she purred, "what's new in your life?" I told her. "Oh, I've just been appointed head librarian at my branch." She nodded slowly, condescendingly. "Oh, that's nice. Someone has to do those jobs, I suppose." Her daughter, bless her heart again, piped up. "What does a head librarian do?" And before I could even think to answer, Gretchen jumped in. Oh, it means Aunt Wendy's in charge of putting books on shelves, dear. And that was it. Something inside me snapped. I looked at her and my own smile, a genuine, powerful one, bloomed on my face. Actually, Gretchen, I said, my voice clear and steady. Being head librarian means I oversee a budget of $2 million, manage a staff of 15, and run programs that serve over 3,000 community members every month. Her smile, for the first time, flickered. But I wasn't done. Oh, I was absolutely not done. I leaned forward, an almost conspiratorial glint in my eye. And I also wanted to share some other exciting news. I announced, my voice carrying across the table. I've been selected to receive the State Library Association's Excellence in Leadership Award, and I'll be giving a speech at their annual conference next month. The reaction was incredible. My mother-in-law gasped, then clapped. Oh, Wendy, I'm so proud of you. My father-in-law beamed. Always knew you'd do great things, kiddo. Gretchen? Gretchen looked like she'd just swallowed a whole lemon, rind and all. Her daughter turned to her, wide-eyed, and asked, Mama, does that mean Aunt Wendy is actually successful? Gretchen didn't answer. She couldn't, but I decided that wasn't quite enough. For the rest of the brunch, it was my turn to shine. I casually mentioned every single accomplishment I'd downplayed over the years. The literacy program I started that brought in 200 new library card holders in the first month. The digital archive project I led preserving local historical documents. The grant I wrote that secured funding for after-school tutoring. The partnership I built with 3 elementary schools to get books into the hands of kids who had no other access. My mother-in-law kept asking questions, genuinely interested, genuinely proud. My father-in-law nodded, reinforcing the importance of library services. Gretchen's face got tighter and tighter with each revelation. Her daughter watched me like she was seeing me for the very first time. Her son, sweet kid, came up and asked if I could help him with a school project about community helpers. Of course, I smiled, handing him my business card. That's when Gretchen shot up. We need to leave, she practically barked, claiming her son had a soccer game. My mother-in-law, ever observant, pointed out, But dear, it's Mother's Day. No youth sports are scheduled. Gretchen flushed, stammered about a special practice session. Her husband looked utterly confused, but didn't contradict her. She practically shoved her kids out the door, her daughter looking back, waving at me before Gretchen yanked her hand and pulled her outside. The door closed, and the room went silent. My father-in-law slowly put down his coffee cup. He looked at me, a serious, kind expression on his face. Wendy, he said, I've always been impressed by your work. Why have you never mentioned that leadership award before? My face got warm again, but this time it wasn't shame. I explained that I didn't want to make family gatherings uncomfortable by talking about myself too much. He frowned, shaking his head. That's exactly backwards from how it should be, he told me. You should be proud of what you've accomplished. This family should be celebrating your success, not you hiding it to avoid making anyone feel bad. My mother-in-law agreed, wished I'd been more open. She wanted to hear all about the award ceremony, my speech. She even asked if she could come watch me speak. I told her I'd love that, and she smiled like I'd just given her the best gift in the world. But the drive home? That was a different story. My husband stayed quiet. I watched the houses fly by, waiting, begging him to say something. Anything. He just kept his eyes glued to the road, his jaw tight. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. What are you thinking? I asked. He let out a long, heavy breath. You embarrassed my sister, he said. Just like that. I embarrassed her. I turned in my seat, staring at him. She's been embarrassing me for months, and you've done nothing. I shot back. He gripped the steering wheel even tighter, insisting Gretchen didn't mean any harm, and that I'd overreacted by listing my accomplishments, like I was trying to show her up. Fury, hot and sharp, flared in my chest. I was defending myself. I told him. She literally told her kids not to end up like me. How was I supposed to respond to that? He didn't answer, just stared at the road, mouth a thin, grim line. I called his name, but he wouldn't respond. We drove the rest of the way in suffocating silence. When we got home, he walked straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I stood in the kitchen, feeling the full, crushing weight of everything that had just happened settle on my shoulders. That night, I couldn't sleep, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the brunch over and over. Did I go too far? Should I have just ignored Gretchen like always? Was making a scene at Mother's Day brunch really the wrong move? I rolled over, looking at my husband's back. He was facing away, and I couldn't tell if he was asleep or just avoiding me. Then I remembered Gretchen's face when I mentioned the award. Her daughter asking if I was actually successful, and that snide comment about someone having to do those jobs. The anger came back, fresh and scalding. She dismissed my entire career, used me as a warning to scare her children. Over and over again for months, I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace. And suddenly, I stopped feeling guilty about standing up for myself. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next morning at work, I was a wreck. My colleague, Robin, walked past my office, then backed up, looked at me, concerned. "You okay?" she asked. I waved her in, closed the door, and then it all came spilling out. Thanksgiving, Gretchen, the months of comments, Mother's Day, everything. Robin listened, silently. When I finished, she just started laughing. I stared at her, utterly bewildered. "It's about time you stood up for yourself, Wendy," she said. "I've been waiting years for you, to put someone in their place." She told me she'd watched me downplay my achievements for the 3 years we'd worked together, deflecting praise, minimizing my role. She reminded me that my leadership award wasn't luck. It was earned through years of excellent work. "You need to own that," she told me. Something loosened in my chest. Then she asked the question that hit me hardest. "Why do you think you have to make yourself smaller to make other people comfortable?" I had no good answer. "Stop apologizing for being good at your job," she said. "The world has enough people trying to tear women down. You don't need to help them do it." During lunch, I looked at the other finalists for the award, pulled up the State Library Association website. 5 finalists. One ran a system with 12 branches. Another had a budget 4 times mine. A third had national recognition. And then my profile, right there with them. I'd beaten out candidates from much larger systems, with more resources and staff. The recognition felt so much more real when I saw it in context. I finally started feeling proud, not defensive. I printed out the announcement, pinned it to my bulletin. Bored, a constant reminder. My phone buzzed. A text from my husband. His mom had called, asking what happened after Gretchen, and I left. She was worried about family tension, wanted everyone to make peace. That familiar pressure to smooth things over, it hit me again. I stared at the text. Then I put my phone face down, went back to work. A little while later, I picked it up again. My thumbs moved. "Does your mother know what Gretchen has been saying about me for months?" I typed, "Send." The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. His response, "You're making too big a deal out of small comments." Small comments. Months of being a cautionary tale. Small comments. I put my phone down again. No reply. Every few minutes, I'd glance at it, expecting another text, an apology and understanding. Nothing. He didn't ask why I wasn't responding. He didn't try to understand. He just went silent, like he always did when I pushed back. That evening, Robin called. Her voice had that careful tone. You know, when people sense something's deeply wrong. I told her everything. Every single incident, every belittling comment. When I got to his text calling Gretchen's behavior small comments, Robin made a noise like she was choking. She couldn't believe it. She said his refusal to support me was almost worse than Gretchen's insults. At least Gretchen was honest about her contempt. My husband, she pointed out, was supposed to be on my side, and he kept choosing the path of least resistance. Her voice sharpened. "You've been making yourself smaller to accommodate Gretchen's need to feel superior. How long are you planning to keep doing that?" I didn't have an answer. She asked what I would tell a friend in my situation. I thought about it. I'd tell them to set boundaries immediately. I'd tell them they deserved respect. "Exactly," Robin exclaimed. "So why aren't you taking your own advice?" I sat down on my couch, feeling something truly shift inside me. She was right. I'd been so focused on keeping peace in his family that I'd let them treat me however they wanted. "You need to decide what you're willing to accept going forward," she said, "because this pattern isn't going to stop on its own." The next morning, my husband mentioned his nephew's birthday party coming up in 3 weeks. It'll be at his brother's house. "What time do you want to leave?" I put down my coffee cup. "I need to think about whether I'm going," I told him. He looked confused. "What's there to think about?" he asked. "I'm not sure I want to put myself in another situation where Gretchen can disrespect me," I replied. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "It's just a kid's birthday party, Wendy. You're overthinking it." I asked if he remembered what happened at the last family gathering. That was different, he insisted, because you made it into a big confrontation. My jaw tightened. I hadn't made anything into a confrontation. I had finally defended myself after months of abuse. I looked at him hard. I'm not going to put myself in situations where I get disrespected anymore. You need to talk to your sister before I'll attend another family gathering. His face changed. You're being dramatic, he accused. You're trying to control my family relationships. I stood up. How is wanting basic respect controlling? I asked, my voice rising. You keep saying you shouldn't have to choose, but refusing to choose is a choice. You're choosing to let your sister treat me badly rather than risk an uncomfortable conversation with her. He went quiet, looking away. We barely spoke for the rest of the day. That evening, he came into the living room where I was reading. He sat down. I talked to Gretchen, he said. I could tell from his voice, from the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, that he really didn't want to. But he'd called her. I thanked him, even though a part of me screamed that this conversation should have happened months ago. I went to bed that night, wondering if anything would actually change, or if this was just another way to avoid the real problem. 2 days later, he brought it up again. We were folding laundry. He said Gretchen told him she never meant to hurt my feelings. She claimed I misunderstood her intentions. I stopped folding, looked at him. What exactly did she say she meant when she told her kids not to end up like me? I asked. He shifted his weight. She didn't really explain that part, he admitted. She just kept saying you were too sensitive and took things the wrong way. Anger surged in my throat. So no apology, no acknowledgement, just blaming my reaction instead of her actions. Did you push back on that? I asked. He got defensive. I did what you asked. I talked to her. Talking to her isn't the same as actually addressing the problem, I pointed out. He said he couldn't force her to apologize, and that's when I made my decision. I'm not going to the birthday party, I told him, my voice firm. You can make whatever excuse you want, but I'm done pretending everything is fine. His face tightened. Are you serious? He asked. Completely, I said. This is going to cause problems with his family, he warned. Your family already has problems, I retorted. And I'm tired of being the one who has to absorb all the damage to keep everyone else comfortable. He left the room without another word. The day of the party came. He got ready alone. Are you coming? He asked one last time. No, I said. I heard his car pull away. I spent that afternoon at the library, working on my conference speech. The building was blissfully quiet on a Saturday. I had the whole second floor to myself. It felt good to focus on something I was actually good at, instead of trying to fix a family situation that nobody else wanted to acknowledge. I worked for 3 hours, got the whole outline done. When I finally looked up, it was almost evening. I packed my things and drove home, feeling more settled than I had in days. The next day, my mother-in-law called. Her name lit up the screen. She'd never called me directly before. Everything always went through my husband. Do you have a minute to talk? Her voice was careful. She'd heard I didn't come to the party. Wanted to know if everything was okay between me and her son. I took a deep breath. Decided to be honest. Things are complicated right now, I told her. Is it about Mother's Day? She asked. Yes, I said. And actually it's about a lot more than just that one day. It's about how Gretchen talks about me at family events. She stayed quiet for what felt like a full minute. Then, I've noticed Gretchen can be competitive and critical sometimes. Relief washed over me. Someone else saw it. She explained Gretchen had always struggled with feeling like she wasn't good enough, despite all her success. I appreciated her honesty, but I made my point clear. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you have to keep accepting it. She agreed immediately. Said she'd talk to Gretchen herself. I thanked her, but honestly didn't expect much to change. Gretchen wasn't the type to listen to criticism. We talked a few more minutes about other things, and when I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The conference, that was the following Thursday. I drove 2 hours to the convention center, spent the morning in sessions. My speech was at 2 p.m., backstage, watching other presenters, trying to calm my nerves. When they called my name, I walked out to a room of about 80 librarians. I talked about the programs we'd built at my branch, how we'd increased community engagement by 40% in 2 years, the partnerships with local schools. People took notes, asked smart questions. The applause felt genuine, warm. Afterwards, at least 10 librarians asked for my contact info, wanting to discuss similar programs for their own libraries. I handed out my cards, glowing. During the afternoon break, a woman named Moira Sellers approached me. She directed a library system 3 counties over. She'd been reading about my work in the State Library Journal. Her system was looking for an assistant director. Was I interested in applying? I was caught completely off guard. This position meant managing multiple branches, a significantly higher salary, but also an hour-plus commute. I took her business card, promised to think about it. Walking back to my car that evening, I felt this incredible surge of excitement, possibilities I hadn't let myself consider before. I waited until dinner to tell my husband about the job opportunity. He was eating pasta, scrolling on his phone. He looked up. "Where's that library located?" I told him. "That drive would be over an hour each way," he pointed out. "Is it really worth it, just to prove something to Gretchen?" I put my fork down. The hurt was sharp. He thought my career ambitions were only about competing with his sister? I explained that this was about my professional growth, had nothing to do with Gretchen. He said he understood, but his tone suggested he absolutely didn't see the difference. We finished dinner in silence. I called Robin that night, told her everything. She was furious on my behalf. She reminded me I'd been building my career long before Gretchen started her commentary. "You shouldn't let family drama derail your professional path," she declared. "Are you going to apply?" "I'm thinking about it," I said. "Stop thinking, start doing," she shot back. After we hung up, I pulled up the application online, stared at it for 20 minutes, then filled it out Saturday morning while he was at the gym. Resume, cover letter, vision statement. Hit submit before I could second-guess myself. When he came home, I told him. He stopped in the doorway. He sighed. "Are you trying to create more problems between us?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm trying to advance my career." He walked past me without another word. I spent the rest of the week replaying his words. His pause before saying he was proud of me. The realization hit me. I'd been making myself smaller for months without even realizing it. Changing the subject, deflecting compliments, all to avoid making him uncomfortable. That Saturday morning, I found him in the kitchen. "Are you proud of what I've accomplished in my career?" I asked him straight out. He looked up, opened his mouth. Then he stopped. The hesitation lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an hour. "Of course, I'm proud of you," he finally said. But those 3 seconds had already told me everything I needed to know. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It was the library system. They scheduled my interview. I told my husband that evening. He looked up from his phone. "That's good," he said, his voice flat, then went right back to scrolling. No details, no luck, no excitement. Nothing. I went to the bedroom and started researching the library system online myself. Thursday morning, I drove the hour to their main branch. The building was stunning. 3 people interviewed me. They asked about budgets, staff, difficult patrons, community pushback. I talked about summer reading, job skills workshops, my vision for libraries as community hubs. The words flowed easily. I felt confident, not thinking about Gretchen or my husband, just the work I loved. The interview lasted 90 minutes. They'd be in touch. 3 days later, my phone rang again. It was the director herself. They were impressed. They wanted to offer me the position. Salary 30% higher. Oversee 4 branches. Manage 60 people. Report directly to her. Help shape policy. I accepted before she finished explaining the benefits package. When I hung up, sitting in my car, hands gripping the wheel, I felt scared and excited all at once. My heart pounded. This was real. This was happening. I waited until dinner to tell him. He was cutting into his chicken. "I have news," I said. He looked up. I told him about the job offer. He put down his fork. "Congratulations," he said. Tone flat. Picked up his fork. "Is that all you have to say?" I asked. He chewed slowly. "When were you planning to discuss this decision with me?" I reminded him I had tried 2 weeks ago. He dismissed it as being about Gretchen. He was quiet for a minute. "That was different," he said. "How?" I asked. He didn't have an answer. The fight started after dinner. He loaded the dishwasher. I wiped counters. He accused me of making major life decisions without considering him. I pointed out that he'd been absent from my life decisions for months by refusing to support me. He said that wasn't fair. "What part isn't fair?" I challenged. "Is it unfair that you never defended me to Gretchen? Unfair that you made me feel bad for standing up for myself? Unfair that you hesitated when I asked if you were proud of me?" He didn't answer, just said I was twisting things around. We went back and forth for an hour, neither of us listening. Finally, he grabbed his pillow, went to the guest room. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling. My mother-in-law called the next week, invited us to her 4th of July barbecue. I almost said no, then realized I'd be punishing her. So I told her about my new job. She got so excited she almost dropped the phone. She wanted to know everything. Responsibilities, branches, start date. For 15 glorious minutes, I talked about work with someone who actually cared. When we hung up, I felt seen in a way my husband hadn't managed in weeks. I told him about the barbecue that night. He said we should probably go. I agreed. The drive, there was 40 minutes of silence. He kept his eyes on the road. I stared out the window. We'd barely spoken since the fight. Polite but distant. He slept in the guest room. I ate breakfast before he woke up. We existed in the same apartment without really sharing space anymore. The barbecue was in full swing when we arrived. My mother-in-law hugged me, immediately started telling people about my new job. Gretchen, standing by the picnic table with her potato salad, looked over when assistant director was mentioned. Her smile was cooler than usual, no comments. Just a nod, then back to her conversation. But I saw her watching me all afternoon. Every time I talked to another family member, her eyes flickered in my direction. Later, her daughter came over while I was getting lemonade. "Aunt Wendy," she asked, real interest in her voice. "Tell me about your new job." I told her about managing branches, developing programs. She listened, asked good questions. Then, the kicker. I've been thinking about becoming a librarian. It sounds really interesting. Across the yard, I saw Gretchen's face tighten, jaw clenched. She looked like she wanted to swoop in, redirect the conversation, but she stayed put. I pulled out one of my new business cards, handed it to her daughter. "Email me anytime with questions," I said. The girl beamed, tucked the card into her pocket. Later, Gretchen's son found me by the grill. He asked about the award I'd won. "Mom told me it wasn't a big deal," he said, "but Grandma said it was really important." I could hear the question beneath his words. Who was telling him the truth? I explained the award, the speech, the other librarians. He listened intently. "That sounds like a big deal to me," he said slowly. Then, back to the sprinklers. I was heading back towards the cooler when someone touched my elbow. Aaron Horton, Gretchen's brother-in-law. He glanced around, like he was checking if anyone was watching. "Could I talk to you for a minute?" he asked. We walked to the side of the house. He looked uncomfortable. "I wanted to apologize," he said, "for not speaking up at Mother's Day." He'd been watching Gretchen put me down for a while. It made him uncomfortable, but he didn't know if it was his place. I thanked him for saying something now. He nodded, then mentioned Gretchen had been stressed lately about a reorganization at her company, worried about her position. Something clicked. Her increased competitiveness made more sense. But I was past the point of making excuses. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you have to keep accepting it. I thanked Aaron, and we walked back to the party. People started leaving around 7. I helped my mother-in-law pack leftovers. My husband stood by the car waiting. Barely spoken to me all day. We said goodbye, got in the car. First 10 minutes, silent. Then he finally spoke. "I feel like you're becoming someone I don't recognize," he said, his voice quiet. "Someone who cares more about career advancement than family harmony." I looked at him, his hands tight on the steering wheel. "I'm exactly who I've always been," I told him. "The only difference is I'm not willing to diminish myself to make other people comfortable anymore." He asked if that included making him uncomfortable. "Yes," I said. "If you're uncomfortable with me succeeding, then that's something you need to look at." He didn't respond. We drove the rest of the way in silence. The next week felt like living with a stranger. Polite, distant. He in the guest room. Me, eating breakfast before he woke up. We moved around each other without truly sharing space. My new job started. The bigger building, the windows in my office, the 3 branch managers reporting to me, budget meetings, staffing reviews. The work kept me busy enough to almost forget about my failing marriage. Almost. I came home each night to find him already in the guest room. Door closed. Maybe 10 words a day exchanged. How long could we keep this up? Robin called Thursday night. I was on the couch, glass of wine. "How are things?" she asked. I tried fine, but my voice cracked. "What's happening with your husband?" she pressed. And everything I'd been holding in just spilled out. "I think we might be heading for separation," I choked out. "I'm losing my marriage over refusing to be small." She didn't try to fix it, didn't tell me it would be okay. She just listened. When I finished, she simply said, "I'm coming to visit this weekend." I told her she didn't have to. She said, "I'm coming anyway." Saturday afternoon. She showed up with takeout food and a bag of movies. We sat on my couch, ate Chinese food. She held my hand while I cried. She just stayed with me while I fell apart. My husband came home early Tuesday. I was in the bedroom, packing a duffel bag. I decided to stay at Robin's for a few days. I needed space to think. He stood in the doorway, watching me. "What are you doing?" he asked. I told him. He came into the room, sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumped. He looked defeated. "I've been afraid," he said, his voice quiet, "that your success meant you wouldn't need me anymore." He admitted Gretchen's comments had triggered his own fears about not being enough. I stopped packing, looked at him. This was the first real thing he'd said to me in over a week. I sat down next to him. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" He said he didn't know how to admit he was scared. We talked for 2 hours. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in months. He admitted he was wrong about Gretchen, wrong to dismiss my feelings. He said watching me stand up for myself at Mother's Day scared him, showed a strength he wasn't sure he could match. I listened. When he finished, I told him what I needed. A partner who celebrated my success, not one threatened by it. He said he wanted to be that person but didn't know how. I suggested couples counseling. He looked surprised but agreed. I unpacked my bag, but told him I was keeping my plans to stay at Robin's if things didn't improve. He nodded. He understood. Our first counseling session was the following Thursday. The therapist listened carefully. She asked my husband about his family dynamics growing up. She pointed out patterns where he protected himself from family conflict by sacrificing my needs. He looked like she'd punched him, his face pale. She showed him specific examples. Every time there was tension with his family, he chose the path that made things easier for everyone except me. He sat there, processing. In the car, he said he never realized how often he'd done that. He looked devastated. Our second session, homework. Write down moments we felt unheard. He had 3 items. I had 17. The therapist looked at my list, then at him. "How do you feel seeing this difference?" she asked. He said he didn't realize it was that bad. She asked if he was willing to do the work. He said yes. Over the next few weeks, we went every Thursday. The sessions were hard. He had to confront how he'd learned to avoid conflict. His parents never fought in front of the kids, always behind closed doors, a united front. He learned that keeping peace meant not making waves. The therapist pointed out he'd carried that lesson into our marriage, and it was destroying us. She gave him tools for confrontation, made him practice saying uncomfortable things out loud. He learned to sit with the discomfort instead of trying to fix it immediately. After our 5th session, he came home. "I need to call Gretchen," he said. "Are you sure?" I asked. "No," he said, "but I need to do it anyway." He went into our bedroom, closed the door. I sat on the couch, trying not to listen, but I could hear his voice. The call lasted almost an hour. When he came out, his face was pale, hands shaking. He sat next to me, staring at the floor. He told me Gretchen accused him of choosing me over his family, said I'd turned him against everyone, that he was manipulated. He took a breath. "I told her," he said, his voice stronger now, "that you are my family, and if she can't respect my wife, then I can't have the same relationship with her anymore." It was the first time he'd ever set a real boundary with his sister. I reached for his hand. He held on tight. He looked exhausted but also relieved. 2 months later, my mother-in-law called, invited us to her birthday dinner. I hesitated, but my husband said we should go. "I made my position clear to Gretchen," he said. "Now we'll see if she can handle it." The dinner was at her house. Gretchen was already there. She looked at us, gave a small nod. No smile, but no hostility. We sat at opposite ends of the table. Small talk. Gretchen didn't direct any comments at me, no digs. Just quiet, cold. Her daughter came over before dinner, folder in hand, excited. She'd done a project on library services, wanted to show me. She'd interviewed me via email, included quotes. She got an A. I told her I was proud. She beamed. I glanced up. Gretchen was watching us, her expression complicated. Not angry, but something I couldn't quite name. My father-in-law toasted, proud of his children. My husband's promotion, my brother-in-law's business. Then he turned to me. "And I want to recognize Wendy's new position as assistant director and the leadership award she received. This family is lucky to have someone so accomplished." Gretchen's smile looked like it hurt her face. She didn't say anything, though, just nodded, raised her glass. I considered that progress. After dinner, my mother-in-law pulled me into the kitchen, hugged me. "Thank you for not giving up on the family," she said. She talked to Gretchen multiple times about her competitive behavior. "Change is slow," she admitted, "but I think she's starting to understand she can't treat people that way." I asked if Gretchen had said anything about me. She said Gretchen mostly stayed quiet now when the topic came up, which was different from before, when she'd get defensive. My husband and I left dinner holding hands for the first time in weeks. In the car, he apologized again for not supporting me sooner. Therapy was helping him understand how his conflict avoidance was actually creating more conflict. He saw now that asking me to stay quiet wasn't keeping peace. It was just making me carry all the weight of the tension. At work, I was thriving. The transition to assistant director was smooth. My programs were getting attention from other systems. A digital literacy program for seniors, expanded after-school tutoring. Moira, my director, told me she'd made the right choice hiring me. 3 months in an email, the National Library Conference. They wanted me to speak on a panel in Chicago. I accepted immediately. When I told my husband, he actually looked excited, asked about details, asked if I wanted him to come for support. I said yes and meant it. Gretchen heard about the national conference through family gossip. My mother-in-law must have mentioned it. She sent me a text 2 days later. Just 2 words, "Congratulations." Nothing warm, nothing hostile. I took it as acknowledgement. She couldn't pretend my career didn't exist anymore. Thanksgiving came around again, almost a year after that first incident. My mother-in-law's house. I felt nervous driving there, but my husband squeezed my hand. "It'll be okay," he said. Gretchen and I were polite. Hello. Small talk about weather. No hugs, but no avoidance. The open hostility was gone. After dinner, her daughter sat next to me, phone in hand. She'd been researching library science programs, wanted recommendations. We went through the list. Gretchen walked past us twice, didn't interrupt. The 3rd time, she actually stopped, asked me a question about my conference presentation. What topic? Community engagement for underserved populations. She nodded. Sounds interesting. Are you nervous about speaking in front of a large audience? I said a little, but mostly excited. We talked for maybe 3 minutes. It wasn't warm, not friendly, but it felt almost normal. Like 2 professionals having a regular conversation instead of 2 people locked in some bizarre competition. My husband reached under the table during dessert and squeezed my hand. I looked at him and he smiled. We both changed. Our marriage wasn't perfect, maybe never would be, but it was more honest now. He actually supported me. He learned to set boundaries with his sister, even when it was uncomfortable. I learned to speak up for myself, even when it caused tension. We were building something real, instead of just avoiding conflict. We said goodbye, got in the car. He was quiet for a few minutes. Then he told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself, even when it was hard. My throat tightened. I told him I was proud of us for doing the work. He reached over and took my hand. I looked out the window, watching the houses, thinking about how setting boundaries hadn't destroyed my family connections. It just made them more real and less comfortable, and that, it turned out, was exactly what I needed. So, I want to ask you, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself, especially with family? How did you handle it? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know.